and I love comparing it to the caffeine industry. Let's think who are the biggest caffeine brands out there? I would say it's Starbucks, it's Red Bull, it's Monster Energy, and none of them are talking about caffeine. Actually, they don't even call it the caffeine category. They call it the energy category. And that's because it's more about the feeling and the compound that the feeling enables than about the ingredients.
You're listening to the Hello DTC show presented by Beaconstac, a show where champions from consumer brands reveal their secret sauce for growth. This is where the best DTC stories are narrated, from one successful brand to another.
Hello everyone, and thanks for listening to Hello DTC presented by Beaconstac. I'm Monica, Marketing Manager at Beaconstac, a solution that helps any CPG business activate a DTC channel for their business. So I wanted to start this podcast with some numbers that I got hold of, and I'll read them off my notebook. So it says plant-based marketplace is a $5.6 billion market and is growing at approximately 30% year on year. Its parent category, however, that's food and beverage, is growing at half that rate, which is 15% year on year. And by the way, we didn't even need these numbers, right, to conclude that this industry is growing exponentially. When we walk into these supermarkets, the shelves and the freezers are proof enough to narrate the story that this is a category that's growing very rapidly. Our guest today, Luis, who heads growth and strategy at Heartbest, is going to talk to us about some of the tips and tricks and growth hacks that worked for him. Heartbest is Mexico's fastest growing food tech brand by revenue, by innovation, and by distribution footprint. It's actually the lead. It's leading the market with everything plant based, starting from milk to cheese to spreads and everything. Lewis is a very strong voice in the DTC space. I've been following him on LinkedIn, and he drops some really great pearls of wisdom, and I love following him and learning from him. We're going to talk about some of the mind-blowing growth hacks that he has implemented in the recent past and how that can help the other DTC brands as well. Welcome, Louis. Thanks for doing this.
Hello, Monica. Thanks for having me.
Let's talk about Heartbest and what do you love about the brand? Can you tell us more about what it does and how it was built?
Sure, sure, Monica. Well, Harvest is a consumer wellness brand. We create products and we create experiences that are basically designed to upgrade people's life. They're basically designed to make them feel centered, to make them feel inspired, to make them feel active and loving. And why? So that they can be the best version of themselves. We are now living in a super increasingly and stressful world, and we need to connect to consumers and we need to show them a way to upgrade their life through our products. So that's basically the challenge we're running into right now. As you were saying, we've been working super hard. We're the fastest growing and the most relevant Mexican food tech in the world. I always say that we're getting the machine ready in order to put some gas and fuel it and reach scale in the coming years.
100%. And also the market that you're operating in. So just last month I was reading about Nestle and how they announced that they'll be catering to this trend of being flexitarian with the range of products, be it their plant-based pizza, or be it the lactose-free latte that they spoke about. But they're not just the only brand, right? There's Unilever, there's PepsiCo, there's Kellogg's. Everyone is just jumping on that bandwagon. And Heartbest is obviously, with their DTC model, nailed this entire market segment. So what do you think about this plant-based market, and how do you think that the evolving consumer is building up this ecosystem?
Well, plant based is it's a huge industry. I wouldn't say that in Mexico it's as big as in other regions, as Asia, as Europe, or even as in the US. But plant based is basically bubbling up on the periphery in Mexico. There is a category today, but all those big CPG players are not building up on it. They're just using the ingredients. And that's where we think that the most important thing at Heartbest is to build a brand upon the ingredients. It's and I love comparing it to the caffeine industry. Let's think who are the biggest caffeine brands out there? I would say it's Starbucks, it's Red Bull, it's Monster Energy, and none of them are talking about caffeine. Actually, they don't even call it the caffeine category. They call it the energy category. And that's because it's more about the feeling and the compound that the feeling enables than about the ingredients, no, which is what we see on most of traditional CPGs. I think the problem about traditional CPG in the plant-based industry and basically everywhere is that I don't think people are ambitious enough. There's a difference between creating a category and taking in market share within a category, but building a brand, these are two different business plans. A great example for these is a brand that I really look and admire called White Claw, no? And they have 60% market share of the hard seltzer industry. And that's because they are building the category, and the category is defining the brand. And how are they doing that? They're integrating it into the culture. They're becoming the default choice, and they compound itself and the categories, and they grow really quickly. I think that's what will happen in this plant-based industry, because it's not only the plant-based industry, it's a wellness industry, Monica. So it's not only about plant-based foods, it's not only about these niche audiences like vegans, like vegetarians. It's about flexitarians, as you were saying. And what's driving plant-based today is the evolution of flexitarians. If we look at it at a global level, only 4.6% of the population declares themselves as vegan. And then we have another piece of data that it's super important, which is 46% of the global population declare that they don't eat cheese or milk. And that's huge. No, that's huge. In Mexico, 80% of the people is intolerant to lactose. But in some cases they don't even know it. They just they just don't feel right when they eat a cheese, an animal cheese, or when they eat a cow's milk. So aiming and targeting flexitarians, it's a constant evolution, no? And that's the way we're building our brand. We like to say that we're building ourselves more like a media company than as a product company. No?
That's very interesting. So you spoke about this new category that's emerging, right? So I'm sure it comes with its own set of challenges of building a category from scratch. Can you walk us through what those challenges are, and how did you overcome those?
Sure. I mean, I would I would say that, and I'm going to put a media company as an example again. Let's say Monster Energy. Monster Energy, the way I see it, it's more as a media company, and they monetize themselves through selling cans. that's a reality. So I think the most successful food brands transfer an emotion. You drink something or you eat something for a feeling. So marketing and brand marketing is done to connect emotionally with the consumers. There is, if you think about it, Monica, there is no other product that has higher frequency in consumption than food. You consume food several times a day, and that leads to a very brand awareness and engagement strategy. No, so I mean, I don't think there's another product that has as much distribution as as a beverage, let's say. No other product is in as many doors, and no other product has as much distribution or shelf space as a beverage. So that's a huge canvas for the industry, no, and for building a brand, no. So let's say at Harvest, we are not only in a phase where we're, let's say, just optimizing for the next season. We are here in the long run. We're looking at what are the investments in our organization and even in our infrastructure, in our brand, that can be made so that when we're ready to accelerate, as I was saying, we have a machine that you can just basically pour gas into it. And that's basically what we've been doing for the last 6 months. I mean, if you think about it, Monica, your your total addressable market for a CPG product, it's a function of what are the consumer occasions in someone days of someone that will use your product times what are the points of distribution and channels that make sense to be sold at. And the thing about Heartbest is that people consume our products at every time of the day. I mean, there's a group of people that start their day that start their day by drinking a cup of coffee with their sugar-free milk, and then there's another group of people that drink it before bed, and another that use it to cook soup in the middle of the day. No, and so the core use of our products is it's from 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. while you're working, while you're having lunch, as a complement, uh, before a workout or after a workout. So I cannot think of any other brand that works in so many parts of the day.
Like you mentioned, there are bigger CPG players riding the plant based wave, and also a bunch of other DTC brands who are setting trends in the industry. And in an ecosystem like this, how do you build a unique positioning for Heartbest?
When they ask me like, who do you see as competition? Yes, I see media companies as an inspiration, but when I have to think about competition, what I answer is, well, it depends on what time of the day. Might be a soda, might be water, might be an energy drink, might be a snack. So there is so many places we can take the Heartless brand, and so many specific SKUs we could create for different cases. No, at the end of the day, everything we do at Heartbest is it's the truth is that it's ultimately to drive retail sales. But what we are doing to do that is different. You know, when Heartbest is on the shelf, it moves. Why? Because we really put a lot of effort in the packaging. We're far the most noticeable brand in the shelf in our category, at least in Mexico. And I think that that's really connected to our digital presence, which is significantly bigger. It's like it's like traditional CPG dairy brands who are scared of e-commerce, let's say. When I actually think that e-commerce is an incremental, because the best brand becomes a daily habit. And if you want to be a daily habit, you have to be available everywhere. No? And so I think that connecting the business model connecting this machine that I was telling you that we're building, and connecting the brand positioning. It's super important in this phase, and it's super important in this CPG ecosystem that we're playing in, Monica. I think I think content is super important in order to build a brand. And I think that, and this is something that you probably know perfectly, and this is what I would say, like, the biggest learning we have from the Silicon Valley spirit, which teaches that we need to build companies with a long-term orientation, so that people have and know how to drive strategy. People in your team. Ultimately, I think that ultimately you have to think about brands more like platforms, and that is truly about planting a lot of seeds that go together and create this type of, like, flywheel, and how that flywheel is moving super fast all the time. I think that people, they don't appreciate the power of compounding. See, in this phase where we've been investing in infrastructure, and we've been investing in a lot of operational structures. We have our own facilities now here in St. Louis. But I mean, back to the brand, I think brand voice is everything. We want Heartbest to look more like Disney World, where you have, like, all these interconnected points, uh, and all of them drive one and another. And I would say that these are all of our products. If you really want to build a brand like Red Bull, let's say, you need to have a business innovation. You cannot just spend money on and just buy ads and television and out of home. And I think our biggest competition will come from CPG companies, and the huge CPG companies, as you were saying, like Nestle, like Unilever, like Danone. And the truth, Monica, is that, and I'm very optimistic about this, the truth is that they will never be able to do the things that we're doing, to see this ecosystem, to operate this flywheel, to have this CPG startup perspective. And even in the plant-based category, no one is doing anything remotely like the way we're doing. We're playing a different game, and the end game is focusing on our strengths, which are the points of leverage. And that is the truth about our brand.
You said quite a lot of interesting things, and I have follow-up questions about each of these. So, first, you mentioned that you look at it as a media company, not as a CPG brand, which makes a lot of sense. But in a situation like this, how do you measure success?
And I'm gonna go back again and compare it to, let's say, Red Bull. So if you compare extreme sport, which is like the community that Red Bull targets, it's niche compared to the wellness industry. These communities also greatly and incredibly influential online, on Instagram. So we think that if we speak to them in the right way, we could successfully build our brand. And how do we measure that? I'm gonna put an example. We just and we were talking about it when we first chat. Um, we have launched our collab collection, and this includes different type of merch. We have tote bags. We've done tote bags. We've done ice cream collaborations. We've done candles. We've done activewear, and I'm fully convinced that this is actually driving cheese and milk sales. I mean, it's not obvious, but it's doing it. What we like to do is looking at other spaces and analyzing them. Let's see what is happening. I mean, let's put an example of what's happening to a streetwear brand or a media brand in order to break out. they're doing collaborations. They're doing collaborations with different brands. They're doing collaborations with different creators. And I think that in order to connect with creators, you have to create yourself first. So our strategy is to run like like holistic marketing programs on top of our whole marketing program. So and those tactical programs are collaborations with different brands and different persons that fall into this wellness wheel. Let's say, because wellness is not just about foods. It's about mindfulness. It's about fitness. It's about spirituality. It's about recovery. It's about there's even social wellness. So for example, we did a collaboration with Lorena Sarabia. Lorena Sarabia, it's probably the most relevant fashion designer in Mexico. And she designed this tote bag for us. And I think this tote bag is literally a form of content for our brand by itself. That it's basically monetizable. I call it marketing that makes money. I think that in the CPG industry, marketing is seen as is seen like, and more if you're a VC backed company, Monica, marketing is seen as purely as an expense, no, as a budget squeezing, and and companies are just burning cash to generate impressions. And the way I see it is that we're monetizing the brand in order to create a much more sustainable model. Because if we're competing with these huge CPG companies, we need to have additional revenue streams. And that's the way we see. In order to have an interesting A&P budget, we need to have additional revenue streams. So that's why we think marketing collaborations are a piece of content, but are also a marketing tactic. The way we look at these collaborations is, as I was saying, as additional revenue streams. So the first thing we do is there is a part of my team that basically works as a like like as a head hunting area, or like a talent, not management, but like a talent hunting area, where we have a huge list of companies, of creators, of people that might bring value to the company now. So let's put an example of Lorena, the designer, which we made the collaboration for the tote bag. Lorena proposed us to design this tote bag. She has a very specific type of design. She has her own brand. So we needed this tote bag to be a merge between our brand essence and her name and her brand essence. And for that, we could have produced 500 tote bags and sold them in our e-commerce website, Monica. But that's not building a brand. That's just selling a product. So we decided to produce, only 50 tote bags. And for that, we set up a KPI. And between Lorena and our team, we set up a KPI of sold out, of getting these tote bags sold out in 2 days. How? Because we were measuring the amount of people that was logging in to our website and was looking at our milk, not buying it, just looking at it. And we were crossing that information with the amount of engagement and impressions we get at our social platforms. So that's how we come with this algorithm, and we set up a KPI, and we said, like, okay, so these has the potential to be sold in 2 days. So that's basically the way we approach KPI setting. This was for the tote bag. We did another collaboration with a cookie company called the Kind Cookie Club, and this was a totally different scope, because this was a collaboration of a plant-based cookie using our products. So the focus here was not building brand with content and bringing an additional revenue stream like we did with the tote bag, but the focus here was generating trial. So the kind cookie club, they have access to a huge audience, Monica, that probably they it was going to be very difficult for this audience to take a play or to try out a plant-based cheese in Mexico. And I'm talking about a category that it's not built. It's starting to get built in Mexico. There's not the level of awareness that plant-based has in the US or even in Europe or even in India. Mexico is it's an emerging market in that way. So doing this collaboration with the Kind Cookie Club gave us access to different audiences in order to generate trial. So I'm not saying that the people that bought this cookie are instantly going to buy our milk, but the next time that they're walking through an aisle or the next time that they see our brand, they're going to relate it with this moment of enjoyment, which was that moment when they were enjoying this cookie. And they're probably going to consider trying our brand. So, wrapping up this question, I would say that the way we measure it, Monica, depends on what we're building. Some collaborations will be measured by trial, some collaborations will be measured by engagement, advocacy of the category, awareness of the brand.
At one side of the spectrum, you're talking about candles. The other side, it's cookies. On a different tangent, it's tote bags. So how do you decide, or how do you come up with these categories with which you should be doing brand collaborations with?
Well, basically, we designed, and this is connected to what we were previously talking about having this Silicon Valley approach to business platforms. So we basically designed this this wellness wheel. That it's inspired on other frameworks that we've studied. So if you have a product, if you have a plant-based product, and you base yourself on your ingredients, let's say you base yourself on oat or you base yourself on um, almond or soy, that's static. That's only going to talk within packaging and within flavor, but that's it. But if you play in a different canvas, which is the wellness industry, then then flavor or indulgence or necessity or hunger, it's only an instant satisfaction, and that's not a feeling, and that's not going to make change in your life, that's not going to upgrade your life. And we know that flexitarians, which are driving the plant-based industry, are not only looking for flavor, and they're not only looking for ceasing hunger, but they're looking for an upgrade in life, they're looking to feel better. So having said that, we have this wellness wheel which connects our brand with sports, with fitness. It connects our brand with other food brands, of course. It connects our brand with fashion, but with sustainable fashion, like brands like Pangaya, brands like Lululemon. We have another arm that connects to mindfulness. So there's a huge canvas there, So basically, we map out potential brands and potential creators within these wellness wheel.
The last time when we spoke, you spoke about how fashion and lifestyle brands are sort of the inspiration for you for your visual identity, and with a whole revamp of your brand right now, that's what you had in mind. I thought that was very smart, and I was mind blown with the concept of it. But can you help us understand how does a fashion brand be an inspiration for a wellness brand?
Right. And that's a great point, Monica. Um, so yeah, uh, for this question, I have to tell you a little bit about my background because I think it's truly connected to a perspective, a personal perspective. So I, I have experience working at basically in two type of industries. One is the spirits industry, where I work with huge traditional and CPG spirit brands, and the other one is fashion industry. So when I came into the Heartbest team, um, we had a totally different brand identity, and we were following this traditional CPG formula, and this is a thing that happens in Mexico, Monica, and I'm sure it happens everywhere in the world. There's a huge companies, the the big groups that controlled, let's say, the dairy industry. No, it's it's probably two or even three groups, and then there's all the little companies and the little brands that are trying to make a difference and trying to win market share in those territories. What I've noticed is that what they're doing is they're trying to replicate the same model that, let's say, Unilever has, Nestle has, Danone has, but with 1/8 of the budget. So that's not going to make any differentiation, no. And I'm going to put an example with milk packaging. There's this like formula that it's been going around for ages, that it's your milk packaging needs to be either white or either a cream color, and somehow there's these like formula that you need to follow, that there has to be like milk pouring from one side of the packaging into a glass, like in a splash form. No, so, and basically that's the way 90% of milk packages are designed. No, so if you look at a shelf, probably the milk shelf in a supermarket is the most clustered shelf. No, probably after sodas or after snacks. And in the plant-based category, it's getting more um, uh, brands in that shelf. There's a lot more presence of brands in that shelf. And if you look at it, they're all, I mean, they're all using the same formula,
Yeah.
Monica, and it's just right there standing. So if you're a shopper and you stand up there, you look at well, not millions, but you look at
Yeah.
plenty of packagings, and they all look the same, and they don't build their brand in digital. So you're just gonna look for the ingredient that makes more sense to you. It's probably oat, it's probably almond, it's probably soy, it's probably coconut, and that's it. So I think that coming from an experience where visual identity is super important, and visual identity sets differentiation, which is from the fashion industry, was a super important value that I brought to this brand. Because when we were designing, when we were rebranding our milk portfolio, we we rolled out these focus groups, and we saw our packaging, and it was white, of course. It has this splash of milk coming from the left side, and our brand was the smallest part in the packaging, and it was all like 300 words of different claims, ingredients, how much protein. It has pea, it has amaranth, it's GMO, it's lactose free. It's like a whole Bible that I didn't think that that was connecting with this flexitarian and with this wellness community. So we did a totally different thing. We bring in um some we're bringing a tattoo designer from New York. We bring in another graphic designer that used to work with Spirit Brands, and we started doing exercises. And we came up with our packaging, and our packaging has a totally different color palette than what you see out there in dairy and in dairy-free products. And that has been standing on the shelves for almost 8 months now. And the feedback we get from clients, the feedback we get from consumers, the feedback we even get by our 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 team, which is on the floor, is that they love doing exhibitions and they love building visibility because the brand looks so nice together. There's even we designed the identity even with an idea of the way they will look as they gain space. So the more space they have, the nicer and the more attention they will call to the shopper. So going back to your question, I think that it's super important in this industry and in the CPG world when you build your teams to have experience not only from the same industry and not only from the CPG world, but from very different types of industry and very different types of companies. Like my marketing team uh, has people from mobility brands, has people from hospitality that comes from hospitality experience, from mobility experience that comes from even ex entrepreneurs. So I would have to say that at this moment, in order to build differentiation and to set up this machine, in order to be more relevant, Monica, and drive growth, one of the most important things is mindset. And it's a mindset that you build within your team. That's probably one of the biggest competitive advantages we have today.
Yeah, I totally agree. Your brand really stands out. In that world of white and cream, there's this red and there's this blue and there's this green. It really stands out for sure. And also the other part that you were talking about, which are there are so many things that you have to put on the packaging. How do you decide what goes on the packaging? Because there's honestly a list of ingredients. There's like you said, GMO. There's lactose. There's a bunch of information that you have to put there. And then in addition to that, consumers also today want to know where the milk is coming from or where it's being manufactured, how is it being manufactured, the entire sustainability story. How do you make sure that the space on the packaging that you have is well utilized?
Yeah, so this was a challenge because there are claims that our product has. And for these, I'm going to put an example, our milk portfolio. So we have the highest content in protein of any plant-based brand in playing in the milk in milk alternatives in Mexico. And that's a winning claim. That's something that clients consider super important. That's something that our innovation and research and development considers super important. And that is something that the rest of the team is always pushing me to position. Hey, Luis, we have the highest protein content. Um, I think this is important, but I think today the consumer in Mexico is not going to buy our milk because it has the highest amount of protein. Yes, it is important, but they're going to buy us, or they're going to consume us if we explain them why it is important to consume plant-based milk with a high content of protein, because it's going to make them feel stronger, because it's going to make them feel recover fast, because it's going to act as a meal replacement in a certain time of stress during the day, so the challenge now is that, yes, we have to put some claims. 30 grams of protein is super important. There's a top selling claim everywhere, which is sugar free. And it's almost considered a sin if you're sugar free not to put it on your packaging. So, yeah, each of our milk SKUs has three main claims. Um, for our original milk, it's 30 grams of protein, low in sodium. For our sugar-free milk is keto friendly, and for our quinoa milk, it's high content of beta glucans, and that's leading to an immunity boost feeling. So yeah, I think the packaging needs to have at least one huge claim, but then that's what happens, and that's the way the shopper looks at you on the shelf. This doesn't work if it's not backed up by a very strong brand platforms, and content strategy that it's constantly speaking about all those benefits and all those feelings and all those sensations you will have if you drink a glass of our milk. So yeah, and I totally understand your question, because when you think about the plant-based industry, you think about like these super products, no, superfoods and non-GMOs and non-lactose, and all those are selling points, but that would be following the same CPG, following the same traditional formula. And for us, brand and content is way more important than that. No, so that's probably the way we're differentiating ourselves in regards claims and in regards ingredients and packaging, Monica.
That's great. That's great. So while you were talking, I was also thinking of another example, and this comes from a Beaconstac customer. What they really do is it's called INI Farms, and they're basically selling fruits and vegetables. And what they've done is they've put a QR code on their packaging, because again, the same problem. I can't put everything on my packaging, so I need a separate layer to be able to tell that story, right? And therefore they've put that QR code on the packaging, which takes the user to understanding where that fruit is coming from, where that vegetable is being sourced from. And I think that's another smart way of just adding layers of information if packaging does not really have enough space, and in most cases that is the case, right? Have you also sort of considered adding some sort of technology to be able to do that? I know digital is everywhere right now, so is there an attempt to connect these two through some technology?
Yes, there is. We're actually, this is a project that we've actually working at it right now. Um, and I'm gonna go back to traditional CPGs. Let's say, how does a traditional CPG brand use QR codes? What's the easiest way they're gonna use it? They're probably gonna print it on their packaging, and then you're gonna scan it, and then either they're gonna use it to drive sales, or to push a sweepstake program, or they're gonna sorry, or they're gonna use it for advocacy, or for awareness of the product, or to tell a story about how they are producing and how sustainable is their process. No, and I think that's fair, and I think that's useful, but I think in most cases, that's not breakthrough innovation. And that's not having a breakthrough approach to technology on QR. No. So um, at the end of the day, we are a food tech company. We're not just a food company. So we need to behave as a tech company. So we've been looking into how to incorporate QR codes on our platform. Not only on our platform, but in our whole um, brand ecosystem. And and for these, I mean, there's not a lot of best practices or successful cases that we've found so far. I can think right now of um, a couple of months ago when Kanye West launched a collaboration with The Gap, and they launched that with one print page on the New York Times, and it was a whole page, and that page had one small picture of a jacket and one QR code,
Yes,
and that was
yeah.
it. There was no brand, there was no product description, there was nothing. So I think that those disruptive takes on QR is the way we're going to start looking at it. We're not just going to put it on. We're probably going to put it in the packaging. We're not just going to put it there. We want to put it in different places. We don't only want to put it in order to drive sales or to drive conversion in our website or to build advocacy. We really want to connect it to content and to drive engagement with it. So um, this is something that our team is working on it, and we're putting a lot of attention. And I would have to say that we're looking at it with a magnifying glass because we really want to tap into it the right way, the way of a tech company would tap into it.
That's amazing. I'm really looking forward to seeing what you do with it. I hope you post it on LinkedIn so that I'm aware of it.
Oh, of course. Yeah. Yeah, be sure that I will.
Awesome. Awesome. This was really insightful, Louis. I think we've covered some really important and crucial aspects of building a brand, working in a category that's exponentially growing, and more importantly, how do you transform that or how do you take it to the next level by just making it more wholesome than just, just one product, like you said, more than a product, start looking at it as an ecosystem. I think that's the biggest takeaway for me from this podcast. Thanks a lot, Louis, for your time.
Thank you, Monica. This was a super interesting chat. Thanks for having me. Huge fan of your podcast, and looking forward to chat with you again.
Thank you.